At some point, you open your phone, scroll for 30 seconds, and feel it. Someone from your graduating class just got promoted. An old friend just bought a house. Someone younger than you is already running their own company. And you are sitting there wondering, what am I doing wrong? That feeling has a name. Most people just call it being behind. Here is the thing. That feeling is not rare. It is not a sign that something is uniquely broken about your life. It is one of the most common quiet struggles people carry today, and very few talk about it honestly. Social media has turned life into a competition with no finish line. We compare our insides to other people's outsides. We measure our real struggles against someone else's highlight reel. And the result is a constant, low-level pressure that whispers, "You are not where you are supposed to be." But what if that pressure is lying to you? Today, we are going to look at why so many people feel behind in life, the psychology behind it, what the Bible actually says about timing and seasons, and why some of the most important stories in Scripture are stories of people who waited far longer than they ever expected to. Let's start with what is actually happening in the brain when you feel behind. Psychologists call it social comparison. It is the tendency to evaluate your own life by measuring it against others. This is not a character flaw. It is a deeply human instinct. For most of human history, we compared ourselves to maybe a few dozen people in our immediate community. That was manageable. Now, we compare ourselves to thousands, instantly, constantly, and the comparisons are never neutral. We rarely see someone struggling and think, "I am doing better than them." Instead, we find the person who seems to be winning, who has the career, the relationship, the house, the clarity of purpose, and we use them as the measuring stick. This is compounded by what researchers call the highlight reel effect. What you see on social media is not someone's life. It is a carefully selected version of it. The promotions get posted. The breakdowns do not. The weddings get photographed. The arguments do not. The new business gets announced. The months of doubt and failure that came before it rarely do. So your brain is running a constant, lopsided comparison, your full reality against someone else's edited summary. There is also the pressure of timelines. Modern culture has decided, more or less arbitrarily, that certain things should happen by certain ages. Finish school by this point. Start a career by that point. Be settled, stable, and visibly successful before a certain number of birthday candles. These timelines are cultural constructs. They are not universal. They are not fixed. But they feel like laws. And when you do not meet them, the conclusion feels obvious. You are behind. Now here is where it gets interesting. The Bible does not share this obsession with speed and timelines. In fact, one of the most repeated themes across Scripture is the idea that God operates on a different clock than we do, and that important things often take far more time than we expect or want. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 opens with one of the most well-known passages in the Bible. It says, "For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven." That is not a passive observation. It is a statement about the nature of reality. Life is seasonal. Growth is seasonal. Purpose unfolds in seasons. And not every season looks like harvest. Some seasons are preparation. Some seasons are pruning. Some seasons are silent. The psalmist in Psalm 27 writes, "Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord." The word wait here is not passive. In the original Hebrew, it carries the sense of active expectation, holding your position, remaining alert, not abandoning the process before it is finished. And in the book of Habakkuk, the prophet receives a vision and is told, "Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay." That phrase, "though it linger," is striking. It acknowledges directly that the fulfillment of something important may take longer than expected, Not because it has been forgotten, not because something went wrong, but because the timing is not arbitrary. It is purposeful. These are not comforting platitudes. They are observations about how things actually work, about the gap between when we want things to happen and when they actually do. Let's look at some of the most significant figures in the Old Testament, because when you examine their lives closely, you notice something that does not get talked about enough. Almost none of them moved quickly. Joseph had a dream as a young man, a vision of his future purpose. And then his life fell apart. His brothers sold him into slavery. He spent years in Egypt as a servant. He was falsely accused and thrown into prison. He interpreted a dream for a fellow prisoner who then forgot about him for 2 more years. From the dream to the fulfillment, years of waiting, suffering, and invisible preparation. When Joseph finally stood before Pharaoh and was elevated to the second most powerful position in Egypt, he was 30 years old. The dream came when he was 17. 13 years. Moses did not even begin his actual mission until he was 80. 40 years in Pharaoh's palace. 40 years in the wilderness as a shepherd. Only then, at a burning bush, in a desert, when he had largely stopped expecting anything significant from his life, did his real work begin. David was anointed king as a teenager. He did not actually take the throne until he was 30. In between, years of hiding, fighting, exile, and waiting. Years when, if you had looked at his life from the outside, you might have said, "This man is going nowhere." These are not stories of delay as punishment. They are stories of delay as preparation. The waiting seasons in each of these lives were not wasted time. They were the time when character was being formed, when perspective was being built, when the person was being shaped into someone who could actually handle what was coming. There is something that happens in slow seasons that does not happen anywhere else. Resilience is not built in easy moments. It is built in long, difficult, unglamorous stretches, where you have to decide over and over again whether you are going to keep going. Humility is not something you can manufacture on a good day. It tends to arrive during seasons when you feel small, when your plans have not worked, when you are not where you expected to be, when you cannot point to visible success and instead have to sit with uncertainty. Clarity of purpose rarely comes during peak seasons. It comes during quiet ones, when the noise dies down, when you are forced to stop performing and start reflecting. Many people report that some of their most important realizations about what they actually want, who they actually are, came during seasons that looked, from the outside, like nothing. Long periods of waiting also tend to deepen compassion. People who have struggled are different from people who have not. They have a kind of understanding that cannot be faked and cannot be taught in a classroom. It comes from experience, from the slow accumulation of hard seasons. When you look at the people in Scripture whose lives mattered most, they almost always went through long stretches of preparation that looked like stagnation from the outside. The formation was happening. It just was not visible yet. So let us come back to that feeling. The feeling that everyone else is moving forward while you are standing still. What if the premise of that feeling is wrong? What if you are not behind? You are just on a different path, in a different season, with a different set of things being built in you that cannot be rushed. The timelines we measure ourselves against are not divine law. They are social constructs, shaped by culture and marketing and comparison. There is no cosmic schedule that says your life must look a certain way by a certain age. Some of the most meaningful lives in history were not visible during the years that mattered most. They were being formed in silence, in difficulty, in long stretches of apparent delay. The question worth asking is not, why am I behind? The better question is, what is this season doing in me? Because seasons of waiting are rarely empty. They are usually full, full of growth that is not yet visible, full of changes happening beneath the surface, full of preparation for something that the waiting person cannot yet see. The feeling of being behind is one of the most common forms of quiet suffering in the modern world, and it is almost entirely rooted in comparison, in measuring your hidden life against someone else's visible one. The Bible has a different framework, not a naive or dismissive one, a realistic one. It acknowledges that things linger, that seasons are long, that the distance between promise and fulfillment is often much greater than we would choose. But it also says something else, that the waiting is not meaningless, that what happens in the slow seasons, the resilience, the humility, the clarity, the depth, is not a consolation prize. It is often the point. You may not be behind. You may simply be in a season that does not yet show what it is growing. And if history, both ancient and recent, has anything to say about it, those are often the seasons that matter most.